being brought up in the country, I had a pony. I went hunting, as you do. Yeah, I went hunting, and my mother married a lord, so that's the way life was. We had very little money and a very large house, and not a lot of heating. It's the way I was brought up. I don't know any different to that. It wasn't special. I would go and visit people's houses, and they had a lot of money and big houses, so it was different in that way. But Mum didn't have staff, so she would literally start cleaning the house at one end, get to the other, and then she'd have to start all over again. She was tired all of the time. She was probably menopausal, but nobody spoke about that, so she cried a lot. My siblings were all at boarding school, but I had a different father to them, so I didn't go to boarding school because he was paying the fees. So I was the only one at day school, which made it tricky because my parents didn't really mix with the parents of the day school. So I had two sets of friends. In the summer holidays, it would be family friends, families of my siblings who were all at boarding school, and never my day school friends. So it was kind of mixed up. But I think mixing it up is good. It teaches you lessons. And
interesting that you mentioned, so I believe your stepfather was the Lord Baron of Pavenham? Pavenham.
Yeah.
Never get these pronunciations were my worst. I stayed in a hall called Hume Hall in Manchester, and I used to call it Hulme or some initially, and they were like, "Oh, you mean Hume?" And I called it Plymouth, not Plymouth.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, so it took a while. Anyway, so interesting that you mentioned that. So you were in British royalty, but you mentioned that it was a tough period in terms of finances.
Yeah, because you have to remember that people were brought up back then to take over as the lord of that area, to look after the people, to employ the people in that area. So having farmland and employing locals, because everybody in the village worked on that estate. So that is the way it used to happen. And that's just the way it was. The gamekeeper would look after the pheasants. You'd have these wonderful ceremonies at Christmas time. We had the Yule log ceremony, where somebody would bring a big log and it would go on the fire, and somebody would speak, and it was a beautiful time as a child. But I don't know politically what was going on.
What was the Yule log ceremony?
Yule log. It was just a historic thing. That's something that happened every year in the house at Christmas time. The Yule log was cut down. One of the trees was cut down, and the log was brought in, and it was being grateful.
So what did you do exactly?
The log was brought to the house, past the ceremony, brought in and put on the fire, and then the Lord would speak, and